And I can't remember how I was going to fit that into what I was talking about. But anyway, now you know the story of the oh, I know what it is. It doesn't matter whether you're in love with a coyote date. Man, if you're in love with a coyote date, that morphine is going to make you feel like they're the most special, wonderful, incredibly wonderful human being on the planet, until the morphine starts to settle down. And then once the morphine's gone, they're just another player sitting on the couch spinning the channels, or bitching about the fact that you won't take out the trash. You know, it changes the poetry from every word from her lips, and the resonating sound of the chords of her voice that fall gently on your ear and shiver down through your soul start to feel like ice spikes in your brain. I mean, that's... And it's not that she has changed. What's happened is the morphine's no longer going through your veins, and you're waking up to reality. Carl Jung, I believe, hit it right on the head when he said that people don't even meet each other for 2 years. Because this is what happens. Are you all familiar with projection? This is how projection works. When you first fall in love with someone, what is happening is, and I'll try to make it as simple as I can for myself, is the man projects his inner female positive qualities on her and falls in love with his own projection. And he'll be telling his friends, oh, she's a princess, she's nurturing, she's warm, she's loving. All the positive female characteristics he has, which in our culture he can't have because that would be too feminine, that wouldn't be hip. And she projects all her positive male characteristics on her. These are her characteristics, but she sees them in him. And what are those? He's strong, take charge kind of a guy, can really make decisions. You know, boy, he's a real man. The next 6 months, he projects his positive male characteristics on her, and she projects her positive female characteristics on him. So he's talking to his buddies, if he does, and says, you know, not only is she warm and cuddly and nurturing and wonderful, but by golly, she can balance a checkbook. She's a kind of a take-charge kind of woman. And he starts describing attributes that ordinarily define maleness. And I'm not trying to be a stereotyper here, but she'll do the same thing. She'll be talking to Harriet. Harriet, you just won't believe this. You know, I told you 6 months ago when I first met John that he was just a strong, take-charge kind of a guy. And he's a man's man, but he has this gentle quality to him too. And he can cook. Oh, we had the best spaghetti dinner the other night. Now what happens? You're a year into the relationship, they haven't met. She's fallen in love with her projections, he's fallen in love with his. Now, what happens the third 6 months, and this doesn't necessarily follow, to the stopwatch, but it's pretty close. She projects her negative male characteristics on him. And he's becoming a little lazy, you know. She doesn't call him a bum right at that point in time, but she's getting ready. And he projects his negative female characteristics on her. That's when it's getting a little bitchy. The words don't seem quite as wonderful coming out of her beautiful lips, which need chapstick for some reason. And then the last 6 months, or the fourth 6-month period, he will project his negative male characteristics on her, and not only is she bitchy, but she's lazy, and she will project her negative female characteristics on him. Well, I thought he was warm, but he isn't. He doesn't care about anything except himself. He's selfish. And what's happened? For 2 years, these people haven't met yet. It's incredible how that works. And which is fine, because it's like go with your projections as long as you can, because it's a trip. But once that's over, if you've got a mate who's willing to take responsibility for her or his happiness and to deal with what's really going on, then you can get to the first level of really being in love and developing a relationship that will work. Before the time that projections are over, there's no way you can develop a loving relationship, because there's nothing to love there except your own projection. And most people start going to their lawyer's offices right around that 2-year period because their projections are over. And they just know I married the wrong one again. Man, have I used that excuse before. This is my second marriage, but I've been involved with the wrong female again. I always just thought I kept making bad choices in women. See? I just thought I just hadn't met the right one yet. When in fact what I was doing is I was falling in love with my own projections, and then later on as those changed, I identified what I didn't like in her as her, just like I identified what was right and what I really liked about her as her, which that wasn't really who she was either. Fascinating stuff. But perhaps the biggest cause of relationship failure is what I call the dance of fear. And as soon as we do this, we'll take a break. But this is, in my opinion, this is really a fascinating concept because it sure illustrates to me exactly what's happened in all the relationships I've been in. And by the way, this dance goes on in every single relationship. There are no relationships that can avoid the dance of fear. And guess how it starts? Tarzan meets Jane. Isn't it great? There he was, just walking down the street, singing doo-wah, ditty, or whatever that's. He's out in the jungle hanging out, and all of a sudden there's Jane, and they strike up a conversation, and they go out a couple times, and what I think may happen here? I really think that this is a relationship where they will fall in love. Can you help me with that word? Love. Everybody together. Love. They really fall in love. And they are in love. They just, can you believe that they hadn't met before now? But they have, and they're falling in love, and it's a great experience. And I guarantee you, there's no experience better that I have found. Any other experiences you can find better than this, you have to go through a withdrawal process in a hospital to get through, usually. They're higher highs, but it's not worth it because those higher highs just might kill you. But falling in love might kill you too, but for different reasons. But what we have here are these two individuals who have found their soulmate. And that's why it feels like a soulmate, because it's on such a level, such a connection. But what they do is they're able to find a minister to do the ceremony out in the jungle. A recent graduate from the seminary out in the sticks. And they love each other so much that only good could come out of this relationship. You all know that because they were in love. Well, what happens is kind of the law of diminishing returns. I don't know whether you've had that class or that concept in economics yet, but there's an economic principle that says at some point you don't get as much as you were, and it kind of starts slowing down. And in terms of the morphine being in love, one of the parties, either Tarzan and Jane, will start experiencing less hormonal shifting in their bloodstream as the other one. In other words, their morphine, being in love, morphine, will slow down before the other ones slow down. And we're going to put this on Tarzan, although it can happen with a female, just not as easy. In fact, I'd like to do some research sometime to determine why, in my experience, it seems like men are the ones that first kind of get out of being in love. But there's a movie with Anne Margaret in it. She's divorced and she flies over to France. And she meets some young stud in his 20s, and she's like in her mid-30s, and really falls for the guy, and they just jump in the sack, and that's all they do for the first little while of their relationship, and it's just hot, and it's great, and she's loving it. And then finally she just needs a little space, because here's this kid that, can't really carry on much of a conversation on her level. He's great in bed, but at the same time after that, there's really nowhere to go except back to bed later on. And so finally she decides she's going to go back to the United States for a break. And she gets on the plane, she's in first class, and I think she's about ready to sip some wine, and she leans back, and she's going to go back to this guy when she gets back to France after she's had a break. My gosh, she needs to get away for a while. And then out of nowhere, this guy comes and sits right next to her in the next seat and says, "Surprise, I knew you wouldn't really want to be away from me." And she just rolls her eyeballs back going, "Oh my God." That's called fear of engulfment. That's called, this is no more fun. I feel like I'm going to die if I have to spend one more millisecond around this human being. Thank you very much. And so in this case, Tarzan needs a little space. He feels engulfed. It's like if you're attached at the hip, which you become attached at the hip, and so to speak, when you first fall in love, because it's like you don't want to be away from this other human being for any amount of time. So you're attached at the hip, and that's great for a while as long as the hormonal activity, the morphine activity, is pumping through both people. Well, Tarzan in this particular illustration loses some of that kick, and so he needs a space. So he tells Jane, "I need a little space," because he feels engulfed. Everybody here ever felt engulfed? You know what that feeling feels like? Not fun. On a level of emotion, it feels like you're going to die. That's what it feels like, because it's a real basic kind of fear, and we first identify with it when we're real little, and we really identify with it on an unconscious level as we're going to die. Now, if you feel like you're going to die, you're going to get out of the picture, no matter what you have to say. But the problem is, what does that do to Jane? What fear is she having to deal with? Abandonment. Absolutely. And there's a lot being written about the fear of abandonment. But the other side of the coin is the fear of engulfment. And in all relationship, where one's going on, ordinarily the other one's going on too. So what's happening here is Tarzan is feeling a little heat under the collar, needs to leave and get some space because he feels like he's going to die. He doesn't know that. Plus, it's the stuff he doesn't know. So he's going to think the reason he feels weird is because Jane's doing something. So under those experiences, and he's a guy that can't share his feelings, so he's not going to sit down and just talk about the fact that he's fearful and he feels like he's being engulfed. He won't do that. He'll just go have a beer and a pizza and watch the game with the other guys who are there because they're feeling engulfed too. And all their wives are sitting at home thinking, "What did I do wrong? I'm dying," because that's what fear of abandonment feels like also. So what you've got is all of a sudden these two people who were just hysterically in love now feel like they're going to die. And it's on a level of stuff they don't know. So they're going to blame the other one. It's Tarzan's fault here. Although women have a tendency to blame themselves at first. What did I do wrong? But she'll work through that. And she'll see the handwriting on the wall. So what happens? What's the next stage? Well, interestingly